My name is Raimondo Ozzini, and I am the Director of Sustainable Development Foundation. And I'm also proud to be a founding member of Regenerative Society Foundation, that is a co-partner in organizing this webinar together with Quantis. We will tell you more about these two organizations, of course, but the idea is that today we can learn from each other. We can learn and focus about the fashion journey towards sustainability and share best practices and idea and concrete actions for this sector, and how to, have the transforming of the sector towards sustainability. So it's a very important issue. First of all, let me tell you about how we will be organized today from a practical point of view. As you've seen from the agenda, the whole webinar will last about 1 hour and a half. We will have speakers that will have 10 minutes each to tell us about best practices and share ideas, based mostly from companies telling us what they're doing, but also from Quantis that will tell us how the fashion pact is declined and how the fashion pact is linked to the concrete, or can be linked to the concrete actions. But we would like to have also feedback from you and questions from you. So please feel free to send your question in a question area of the webinar, and I and my colleagues will try to pick up some questions, because at the end of the session we will have 10-12 minutes of questions, and some of the questions that cannot be picked up, maybe we can just contact you or treat them in a private way, but we'll try to take them. So please feel free to make questions to the speakers and also to share your ideas. All materials will be sent after the webinar to the attendees, so you will receive presentations and input. And please remember that this webinar is recorded and will be available on the YouTube of Quantis and Regenerative Society Foundation. And also on the internet site, so you can see it also in the future whenever you want. Now, before we start with a short introduction, let me tell you about why we are in a very important moment for the fashion sector and sustainability. The Fashion Pact, that is the center also that of this webinar will lead us to all, it is already 1.5 years old. But after the pandemics, then we are in a very important moment. People really think much more about sustainability than 1.5 years ago. We need to be faster. We need to be more concrete. We need to take another, let's say, speed towards the realization. So from one hand, fashion sector is very polluting. This we know. With this, we know where we start. We know which challenges we have. But I would like to focus on the positive aspects. There are some very important positive aspects. First of all, I think that fashion sector has a direct link to people and to communication. It's a business that can talk to people and can make people think. So you can spread messages and sustainability messages for regeneration in a very direct and fast way. This is very important. Then it can improve quickly. It can improve in a much faster way than the other sector. For example, we've seen that the Circular Fashion Report 2020 by Ellen MacArthur Foundation said that sustainable fashion can increase revenues to the sector by 67%. 67% is the sustainability added value to the sector if we move towards that goal. And a Boston Consulting Group research said that 80% of the young people are ready, for example, to buy used clothes, and it's something that they do already. So the circularity mentality in the fashion sector, in the customer, is already there. So this gives us the feeling that this is a sector that can really improve quickly, and this we would like to do our small part with this webinar, trying to tell how we can improve. Okay, so let me tell you now who are the speakers. The speakers you will see already, and you are seeing already in the camera. Simone Pedrazzini from Quantis, the director of Quantis Italy, will lead us. Hello, Simone. You will lead us telling us about the Fashion Pact, first of all, from a general sense, and then in all the three pillars of the Fashion Pact together with your colleagues in Quantis. You know, Quantis is very much linked to scientific and strategic management of this transformation and regeneration of the companies. Then we have Andrea Rosso, who is the diesel sustainability ambassador. Hi, Andrea. You will tell us at the beginning about what you're doing in your company and why this is very important for your company. Let me introduce you also to Sara Mariani from OTB, the Chief Sustainability Officer. Hello, Sara. And Veronica Tonini, Chief Strategy Officer and Sustainability Coordinator from Ferragamo. Hi, Veronica. Then from Quantis, we will have also Michela Gioacchini, Senior Sustainability Consultant about the biodiversity. Hello, Michela. You will tell us this very interesting part about the Fashion Pact. Then we will have Rebecca Burgess, Executive Director of Fibershed. Hello, Rebecca. Very interesting non-profit company, and tell us more about Regeneration. And last but not least, my colleague and friend Giovanna Gregori from Regenerative Society Foundation, the director of the foundation, who will tell us what is a Regeneration for this very new foundation, very important foundation, who just is a baby, but it's already a very strong baby, I have to say, the foundation. So you will tell us more. And at the end, then we will have the question. So I would like to start immediately with Simone Pedrazzini, Director of Quantis Italy, with the introduction to the Fashion Pact. Please, Simone.
Thank you very much, Raimondo. Hello, everyone. Great introduction, thanks. And it's really a pleasure for us as Quantis to be here, to have the opportunity to put together with the Regenerative Society Foundation, Giovanna and the team, these amazing panelists of today. So grazie Andrea, Sara, Veronica, Rebecca, and Michela to be our speaker today. Let me start with this picture, which is quite aligned with the message from Raimondo a few minutes ago. I use this picture to mention that we know it's a challenging period for the fashion sector. The COVID situation is not an easy one to manage. And at the same time, I like this picture because even if the situation is complex, looking at this child, we are somehow obliged to think about a better future. So that's why I'm using this picture, because yes, the sector is disrupted, and yes, we need urgent changes, and we need those changes now. And for a better future, we have to act, and the action has to be implemented today. And looking at this second baby is illustrating the fact that he's not falling down, is more close to fly, let's say. And that's why indeed we have to fly in a more resilient direction. We need a more resilient supply chain. We have to benefit from, let's say, a more positive pressure from the final customers, which is related to a more interest and a deeper interest in sustainability. And last but not least, we have also to attract and keep the best talent of tomorrow. And we know that the sustainability interest, the level of maturity and understanding and looking for these sustainability related topics are increasing. So that's, let's say, why we need to go ahead with a robust sustainability journey. And now that we set up the why we should act, many realities are approaching us, asking how we can implement a more sustainable fashion system. And many realities are asking us, what is the most relevant framework? Honestly speaking, the only valuable framework that we have is our planet. Our planet with its boundaries. We know that we don't have infinite resources and we don't have, let's say, unlimited buffers. And the positive aspect is there is a tool which can help us, and this tool is the science. Science is telling us what are these boundaries and is the good tool to measure and therefore manage properly these activities, our activities within the fashion sector, within the planetary boundaries. So that's the, let's say, the logic and that we would like to follow. So yes, the science is the tool, action is what we need. And what about business? If we come back to our fashion sector, we know that since August 2019, the Fashion Pact is driving the sector in a more sustainable direction. And it's interesting to see that the Fashion Pact itself is explicitly referring to quantitative and science-based targets. So even in the one-year status report published by the Fashion Pact, according to the three pillars, so climate, oceans, and biodiversity, there is this strong science-based approach as a core, I would say, at the middle of this equation. So just before let the floor to the other speaker, I would like to say that, yes, the business in this case with the fashion sector is there, promoting a quantitative approach, which is good. Science-based target and tools are available, so it's great. But at the end, what is really needed are concrete actions. So happy to be part of this event today because we would like to share concrete actions and concrete reality because the ambition is high, but it's feasible. That's the main message that I would like to share in this first, or let's say, introduction speech from my side. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Simone, for this introduction about the Fashion Pact. We know that already 80 of the biggest and most important companies have signed it, and it's co-chaired by two big names of the sector. So, and thanks also for having put science together with action. So, starting from my practical experiences, it's a pleasure to introduce Andrea Rosso from Diesel, Sustainability Ambassador. Hello, Andrea. My question to you is about what is your feeling and your idea about sustainability and business? Does sustainability converge with business, or is something that you are working on two separate levels? And which is your perception? When I talked to you during last days, you told me about how it is important listening to the customers, but also the education is very important. This is what you mentioned. Can you tell us, please, more about these ideas?
Ciao to everybody. It is very important, education, because today the education level is becoming very high. What Simone was saying about measurement and about tools is becoming almost normality now, and I think that soon we will get a general understanding of how we can measure this in a more quick and precise way. Our clients is demanding, and the question that we have constantly in the latest, especially here, it's always similar in the fact that the consumption of water, how our product is made of, and let's say a related question to the product, because I think people wants to know, wants to also have a more transparent approach when they buy and they spend certain types of money on product. If you spend 180 euro for a pants and jeans, you really want to know why you're spending that for, you know, and if that spending money, there are reasons behind that are more responsible, then the acquisition is more safe and also you know, so more happy, you know. I mean, this is in terms of creativity though, maybe there is kind of a misunderstanding here that sometimes we think that because the product has a sustainable, responsible part doesn't mean that the beauty, the aesthetic comes out. Actually, today the biggest challenge is to have with the science, innovation, and the push on that to have the best effect on our product, but with a responsible mind. I always say this, maybe, I don't know, it looks like a joke, but Diesel has always been famous for the dirty denim. And if this dirty is clean, then it's a really beautiful things, you know. So I would love to think also that our direction and our aim is to find solution and innovation, partnering with our supplier, but also partnering with our R&D and production department with their knowledge to give the best to the clients.
So education means also to listen from them, but also to tell your customers what you're doing, and also to send good messages. So which is the wording and the words and the vocabulary that you are using? You told me that you are starting an internal revolution in your company by creating a new vocabulary, because words are very important, but also you told me that you are listening also from your employees to their ideas and their proposals.
It is important to have the same language. It is important to set up a vocabulary. And it doesn't matter which office. Every office should have this vocabulary, or every office should know about the vocabulary that reflect the product that we make, you know. So internally we are making a responsible vocabulary, that's how we call it, which is going back to school, is learning a new language. Almost when I learn English in school, is pretty much the same, you know. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's more difficult, but generally talking, when we produce and we make the product and we promote through our channel and distribution and our website, our language should be common, you know. So internally, it's important to have the same language. It's important to have the same education, and we're finding that the R&D office has already a strong vocabulary, very well deep, and also we learn a lot from them too. It's almost like having inside the company and you didn't know before, but once we ask, hey, what can we do to save more water, to have less chemical, to act more responsibly on the making of our product, wow, there is a list of things that was already there, you know. So we actually are finding out that now. And probably, yes, it's true that we start slow, but I have to say that inside the team is moving fast, and what we would like to in the future to speak the same language.
Okay, so the Fashion Pact maybe acted as a kind of accelerator of discovering something that it was already in the company, but it needed to be taken up and maybe put in a framework. So this is also very, very important. Can I ask you one last question? Can you tell us about one single action that you feel proud of in terms of sustainability and transformation of your business towards sustainability and regeneration? You can tell us about?
But I'm always fascinated with let's say the waste and the older let's say wastage of fabric that was in the bin, because actually from that you can create a lot of new things, you know. And we found out 1 year and a half ago actually that we are wasting a lot of proto sampling. When you do a wash and you just want to see the effect, you see it, and maybe that after it has been put away or maybe thrown away, and that's not good. And we find out that internally we have a lot of this proto sample. So what do we do? It's getting together all of this sampling, combine it together into an upcycling roof or platform, and create a new upscale the value of the garment from his origin. So a mix of dead stock and a mix of proto sampling, a mix of trimmings, a mix of all leftovers that we had inside the company. And we create an event in last year in 22nd of February, actually before the whole crazy period came after. But it was a success for me because when I say upcycling, and I'm very sensitive about this word, it's really giving an upscale to the product. It's giving an extra value to it, and an educational value too, because upcycling is not only a beautiful product made, it's art, it's visuals. So, and it's very much educative, you know. Actually, our wardrobe is full of stuff that we don't wear anymore, but those stuff somehow, if you take it back and you give some hint of new, I don't know, from embroidery or to you wash it with the color, it can be a completely new garments. And so we did also inside our stores, we create a chain. You know, usually it was actually a fashion week, was a female, fashion week. So instead of having the catwalk, we put our seamstress in line, because that's the line that enter into the store and they create the product from zero, from scratch, created, updated, and after it goes inside the store to buy for the people. So for me, that's a very educational point of view, because instead of having a catwalk with models, we had just a line of seamstress sewing the making of the product. Sometimes we don't know where that comes from, but for me, education is very important. That's has been very effective, because the people that stop by all the time ask the seamstress that some of them they've never been to this type of events or to Milano, and for me it's very pleasant, because working with them almost every day, it's nice to see them in a different environment, you know, with music also. By the way, with music, we promote a band that is called Bamboo, that they don't play with the instrument, but they play with the more percussion, so sounds that are made from bucket or toys or anything that they can find, you can find on the trash, because actually that's the sound. The upcycling sound is a beautiful sound too, is a beautiful melody when you combine it together. And with that, we create a video registering using actually their skill with the bamboo. They came to record on the seamstress laboratory all the noise of the sewing machine, the iron, the pressure from the iron, the overlock machine, the bottom machine. So all of this, when you enter into this room, people think it's noisy, but actually registering every different sounds, if you combine it together with a nice rhythm, it forms a melody, and that was the melody of our video. So for us, it was very nice to experiment this and create.
Can you please let us show? Can you please show this video for the end of your? Thanks very much. The sound is really very, very good. You were right. And so this is the power of communication of your sector that we spoke. So thanks very much. Unfortunately, we don't have more time, but thanks, Andrea, for your for your ideas and speech, because you open up now with the fashion perspective this webinar. Thanks very much, and hope to see you in the next webinar. And good luck with your work towards sustainability. Bye, Andrea.
Thanks a lot.
So, Simone, are you still there, or are you playing any drums?
Not yet, but I'm here. Yes.
Okay. So Andrea told us about upcycling and communication. Now, can you tell us more about the pact, the fashion pact, starting from the climate? This is the most important or the most urgent, at the world level, crisis that we are facing. And this year is very important. We will have the COP26, the conference, World Conference on Climate in Glasgow. It's very important in November. So it's becoming something serious, because states need to take some commitments. Can you tell us more about the climate part of the Fashion Pact?
Yes. It's not an easy task, not to build or to make this presentation after this nice presentation and motivating video. But I think it's the good combination between creativity and a scientific and rigorous approach is really what we need to build in a positive way and positive dynamic the changes that are needed. So coming back, yes, to the first, let's say, pillar of Fashion Pact, we know, as you said, Raimondo, that the climate change crisis is probably the most urgent one. When we, as Andrea said, we need a common language, and I would build on that, saying that probably we need a common understanding. So in that view, I make the link with the context today. And when we prepare this event with the other speakers the last days and weeks, the question about the influence of lockdown on greenhouse gases emissions has been raised. And therefore, I decided to share this figure recently published by Nature, and the graph is plotting the weekly CO2 emission over the year, comparing 2019 versus 2020. And what we can see is that in 2020, the emissions are lower. The orange curve is lower compared to the curve of 2019. What is also interesting to dig in is that the influence of lockdown on globally weekly CO2 emission is there. So for instance, the number 2 is highlighting the drop when Italy stayed the first national lockdown. So, and then you have the other, let's say, the other influences over the year. So again, is the comparison over the year. And the conclusion is that, yes, the global emission in 2020 fell by approximately 6%. What is a little bit challenging is when we try to compare this value with the reduction per year according to the Paris Agreement. And the percentage is a little bit higher. So even during this COVID situation, we are not aligned with the progress in terms of emission reduction that we need. What does it mean for a company is what we present on this slide. Here you have the evolution of the emission according to the 1.5 degrees and the Paris Agreement. So to reach this ambitious net zero vision, I would like really to stress the point that the first priority, the key priority, is the reduction of our emission. The priority is on this big and strong reduction. And then, yes, we can talk about removal solution, we can talk about offsetting, but we don't have to mix the priorities. And this is needed because if we go ahead business as usual, which means without accepting that we have to reduce the emission, we know that we are not going in the right direction. So that's a very important message from my side. The first priority is to put in place action according to a strong reduction, which means really tackle the bold decisions, and then use the offsetting and the removal solution for the residual emission, but not mixing the priority and the way to address them. Just my last word about this climate pillar is, again, the fact that business has the possibility to use the science as tool. We know, and it's the case for climate change because we have the science-based target initiative. So the tools are available, are there, and we need action. So it's nice to take picture, to carry out the corporate footprint, to set ambitious target according to science-based target. But then what the planet are asking us is to take action. So from visionary business commitment to bold action is what we really need at the company level. That's my last message on the climate pillar.
Thanks, Simone. I think you've been very effective. In 4 minutes, you told the whole story, what is needed, what is really needed. So it's needed to know where we are, to define where we want to go, and how to get there with actions. So you made it very clear, and thanks for this. It was not easy to summarize like this. And so let's see now, let's take an example, a practical example, a corporate story from Sara Maliani from OTB. Sara, are you there? I cannot see you on my screen, but
yes, I'm
hello.
here.
Hi, Sara.
Hello.
So
Hi.
Simone told us that first thing to be done should be to measure where you are. So I know that you have done this in your company, and you have done a very good work, a lot of work. Tell us more about this history, and how then, what are your next steps once you do this?
Sure, thank you. And for sure, as said, and Simone said, what we need is actions. We have a tremendous task ahead of us as brands. The objective of reducing of 1.5 degrees is very big. So we need the actions, but actually from a corporate point of view, we need to also know where we start from, so we can tailor those actions according to actually where we are and where we want to be. So this is what I would like to share with you. And if you could move to the next slide, please. So when I arrived in OTB, and I arrived last June in the midst of the pandemic, so it was a fun exercise. What I decided to take as an angle was to understand, first of all, where I was, then to be able to decide what to do. So I decided to adopt a methodology that I called in 4 M's. That's very basic, very straightforward, but it helped me to set a route. So the first point, next, is map, for sure. So we need to map. I needed to understand what were the processes and what needed to be done and what was already done. Then next, please. We needed to measure. We needed to set a baseline, because only by setting a coherent and strong baseline, we will be able then to set the direction that will allow us to, next, please, to mitigate the impacts. So the baseline is actually the main part that needed to be done in order to mitigate the impact. And after that, the last pillar is to monitor progress, because once you've done the exercise, you know where you are, you know where you want to be. You need to make sure you stay relevant and you go where you need to go. So basically after a very short mapping phase, we decided to dive directly into a corporate footprint, and we went for a full scope 3 footprint of all the group and all the brands of the group. So as you can imagine, this is not a small endeavor. I'm sure you are all familiar with what a corporate footprint is, but just very shortly to recap, what's a scope 3. So basically, corporate footprint is a catalog, is an inventory of your emission that the brands has produced directly, meaning through its facilities, through its logistics, through its company cars, business travel, but also through all the buying of the raw materials, the processes of processing, transportation of those raw materials, down to the last part, the more difficult part, the scope 3, which is how do my products then reach the stores, how they are really used, how many times they are washed, what's the end of life. So it's an exercise that really aims at mapping everything that you do and to understand, you know, how to move from there. So that's what we decided to do. And we are, to be honest, we are working with Quantis, and to be honest, we have not finalized the full exercise yet. We have completed the gathering of the data, and we are now soon starting on the results. But I would like to share our experience as a corporate, as a group that has been doing a lot of things in sustainability, but didn't have a structured way of doing that before my arrival. So if you could move to the next one, please. And I promise you, I didn't coordinate with Andrea nor Simone, but actually the harmonization part is something that is somehow in my DNA. I was working back in 2008 with a global social compliance program, and the buzzword then was harmonization. So we have a very big task ahead of us. We need to speak the same language. We need to have harmonized practices. So the fact that a corporate footprint is based on a scientific methodology, is based on a scientific approach, actually allow us to have an harmonized way of doing things. We hear many things nowadays around sustainability, a bit anything and everything. So we don't want to do greenwashing, we want to do serious things. So the way we approach it in kind of a serious way, in a scientific way, and the science-based targets allow us to create that harmonization of practices that will then serve the greater purpose of reducing this 1.5 degrees. And also, if you can move to the next, please. The idea is, again, and I guess you'll be hearing that a lot today, and although we didn't coordinate, I think it's a really a need of the industry. It's a need of where we are right now to speak the same language and have a common vocabulary, because we need to help each other as well. We need to share the best practices that we are implementing in our respective brands to give us a help, because it's a long way to go. So the building a common vocabulary is very helpful. Some things that maybe also could be useful, for example, to those brands who have not done the corporate footprint yet and are wondering, should I go there, should I not go there? What I can recommend is absolutely to dive in, although it is a complex exercise, and it could be a scary exercise. Let's say it. It could be scary because you know full well that you will not have all the answers. You will not have all the data that it's needed. And basically, you dive in and you cross your fingers that you will have as much as possible, but it's impossible to be, next please, it's impossible to be perfect. And sometimes we know that the brands don't want to be in that uncomfortable position whereby they know they will have some gaps, but actually the scope of the exercise is also to highlight those gaps. Because if you highlight those gaps, you understand where you don't have a process in place, then you can put it in place and you can have a better visibility on what you do, and you actually move towards progress. Next, please. And that's my last slide. So what we want to do is progress. It's just a matter of how we get there. And I guess for us, the corporate footprint, although scary, although a difficult exercise, is also being able to pinpoint where we needed to be more careful and to make everyone aware of what the decisions that they take every day have a real impact. Whether they buy a fabric in this country or in that country makes a difference. So as Andrea was saying, it's also part of an education. So yes, it's difficult perhaps. It requires effort, but it gives you a lot in return. So I really recommend this exercise. And then once we've done it, for sure, we will be able to set the action that we want to set. And we want to set a lot of them. We have a very ambitious roadmap ahead of us, and we'll be more comfortable that what we will do is actually structured, and it can take us where we want to be.
So thanks, Sarah, for having told us about the practical experience and also personal experience, because I think you learned a lot personally and also with your colleagues doing this. Can you tell us, I would like to ask you the same question that I proposed to Andrea. Can you tell us one action that you feel proud of, maybe one of the difficulties you've met and you maybe have overturned it or find the solutions in a maybe interesting way? Or if you don't have this, one action that you will feel proud for the next month?
Well, actually, this was a very surprising exercise because it gave us a lot of ideas, and all the teams are coming up with very good ideas of how to tackle different issues in a very simple way. So we'll have a lot of projects coming up, but actually something very nice that we were able to achieve, it's with the logistics. I talked on the very first day that I met the director of the logistics. During my induction, actually, I was just arrived. I talked about the packaging. That's also a big part of the Fashion Pact. And I talked about the importance of the material of the packaging, but also the size of the packaging, because we know that sometimes we tend to ship small items in big boxes with a very big volume. So we carry around air, and that's not really very friendly. So we talked about what could we do to improve the packaging as far as the components of as far as the material go, but also the size of the packaging. And I'm proud to say that after 6 months, we actually developed and implemented a project for one of the designers' brand, whereby we changed the whole line. We changed the size of the packaging, the material. We used to have 2 containers, one white box with a bag, and all those white boxes in a bigger cardboard box. So we eliminated one. We only have one layer that's self-shipping, tailored to the size of the box out of certified cardboard. And with that, we are able to do, first of all, considerable savings, also in economic term. We are talking about 6 figures amount. So it's a nice and interesting saving. We are saving about 130 tons of CO2 every year, and also 307,000 metric cubes of water, which is basically 1.5 Olympic swimming pool, just with this small action. So I'm very proud of that.
Very good. Thanks very much for this. And maybe something that can be also learned more by your colleagues all over the world. And I take the chance to say hello to all the participants to this webinar that in different timings. I am in Rome and it's now afternoon, but people connected from the States, from Asia. So thanks for this example. It's something that can make you proud, because at the end of the day, it's the results that really count. Thanks very much, Sarah. And now I call back Simone to start with the introduction of the second pillar of the Fashion Pact, that is about the oceans and plastics. You know, this is something that is really important, but also everybody's talking about this in the last 2 or 3 years. We know that the fashion sector is responsible of a considerable amount of microplastics in the oceans. Tell us, Simone, what is the Pact telling us, and what can we do to make the Pact a reality?
Yeah, thanks, and I would like to reassure everyone it's my last speech today, but indeed in this second key pillar, so under the umbrella of the name oceans is a sort of synonym to address the plastic, let's say, challenge. As you said, in the last couple of years, this plastic topic was really under the attention of many stakeholders, and a lot of emotion jump in the discussion when we are referring to plastic. So let's try to make the link with what the science is telling us in this field. Just to refresh everyone, here again, we have the 3 pillars of the Fashion Pact, and as published in the 1-year status report, we can see how the ocean pillar is developed, is detailed. So on the next slide, we have the commitment or the details related to the ocean pillars. And it's good. It's a good news to see that it's addressing the plastic use in the packaging for the sector, which is an important aspect. And we saw with Sarah that packaging and logistics are key aspects where optimization is feasible. Here on the plastic use, that's where the focus is according to the Fashion Pact today. What I would like to bring now is, let's say, a contribution totally aligned with the keyword progress, as Sarah said a couple of minutes ago, because I think it's useful to recognize that if for the climate change issue, the tools are there, okay, the science is there. For the plastic, let's say it's a ongoing progress or ongoing process. So here on this slide, I'm sharing what we recently published in a guidelines for corporate plastic stewardship with Quantis, but with other key partners around this publication. And basically what we can see on this scheme is, in order to achieve plastic leadership commitment, such as net zero plastic leakage on the right side of the slide, we need to first start again by measuring the total footprint and then put in place mitigation activities. Let me focus on the measurement part. So on the total footprint, here it's interesting to go a little bit deeper. I don't want to be too technical, but again, it's the common knowledge. We need to split the topic between the plastic use and the plastic leakage that you can have in your supply chain. So here, and you have the details in the reference of the slide, but in this multi-stakeholders project delivered in the last 2 years, the plastic leak project, you can now have access to a methodological guidelines helping business in better identifying where in your supply chain you have risk of plastic leak. And you have to consider that if you are using plastic material for packaging, if you are using synthetic fibers in your product, you are using plastic, and unfortunately leaks are related to this use, and it's not directly under your control, is by definition in your supply chain. And how the plastic is managed along your supply chain is something that is related to the regional context. So it's needed to map what are the risks related to the different area or the different suppliers, and then act on this key priority, because plastic is not managed in the same way in any region in the world. So that's why here the scientific progress is in progress, as I said, and you can now map where are the risks related in terms of plastic leakage, which is a good mapping solution to then focus your effort on action. So just to conclude here on the pillar of ocean and plastic, my main message here is, yes, we need action, but even more compared to climate challenge, here we have to measure, because the plastics leakage have some specificity at the local scale, which is needed to be mapped out. So that's my main message related to the plastic and ocean pillar.
Thanks very much, Simone. So what we learned is that this is a bit more complex in terms also of theory and scientific approach, but it's still feasible because we start to have some metrics, we start to have some tools like the project you have mentioned. So it's something that we can use from now, and some companies are already using it. So I would like to say bye to Simone. You said that this is your last presentation, but your colleague Michela will tell us about the third pillar. So thanks, and thanks very much for your presentation and for your work you are doing. Let me call Veronica Tonini from Ferragamo on the virtual stage. Veronica, are you there? Okay. So about the oceans, the ocean pillar, can you tell us what are you doing, or tell us how you are implementing this in your company?
Yeah, sure. So hello everybody, and first of all, thank you for inviting to this interesting fashion journey towards sustainability. And I would also like to share with you a short video, just to mention in really 2 minutes what Salvatore Ferragamo is doing for sustainability in our journey on this important strategic pillar for us. So I would request to have the video on. Thank you.
Sustainability is much more than a matter of materials. On the 24th of August 2019, we committed to the Fashion Pact. Our common goal is to protect the environment by fighting global warming, restoring biodiversity, and safeguarding our oceans. But in order to act sustainable, you need to think sustainable. In April 2019, we presented the Sustainable Thinking exhibition at Museo Salvatore Ferragamo in Florence. A bold statement on the current relationship between our industry and the world we live in. We chose to open it with a symposium, a conversation on sustainability and the future of fashion, to reflect together on the impact that we have on this planet and prove that another way is possible. We work with people for people. Inclusion, equality, and ethical conduct are the foundation for all we build. From the very core to the fringe of our organization, everyone is involved firsthand in keeping these principles alive. We run together. We look after each other. We nourish the culture that raised us. Because our biggest achievement is to make sure every day that we're manufacturing a better tomorrow.
Okay, so I hope that you like the video, and it's just a video that we use in particular in our website, just speaking about sustainability.
Very good, and also sustainable passion is also very good.
Yeah, this is we speak about responsible passion, and this is really our commitment inside the company. And okay, I would like just to speak about also our big challenge in having signed the Fashion Pact. And first of all, I would like also to mention that Salvatore Ferragamo is together other important brands that are in the luxury fashion industry. In particular, we decided to sign the Fashion Pact in 2019 together with Prada, Zegna, Armani, and Moncler. And I would like to highlight this fact because it's really important, first of all, I think, to be united in this big challenge. This is really important because only if we are united, we really will have success for this big challenge on sustainability. And on the Fashion Pact, we are working a lot with all the other colleagues of the other brands that I mentioned before. And the collaboration, it's also fundamental for us to bring all the interest to the Fashion Pact regarding also the Italian supply chain, because this is another point that is really important to highlight. We are doing as Ferragamo different activities for Fashion Pact, but regarding the Ocean, it's really important for us to work regarding the two actions that Simone before mentioned. First of all, one of these action is the elimination of plastic in B2C packaging by 2025 and B2B by 2030. And then the other important action is to ensure that at least of all plastic packaging is 100 recycled content. This is necessary by 2025 for B2C and by 2030 for B2B. We are working on the Fashion Pact in order to achieve these two goals together with Reset. We are supported as brand by Reset, that is a delivery partner with technical expertise, obviously, because they need also to call innovators in order to really achieve this kind of action, and to wait also the collective to scale this innovative solution for everybody. The other thing that it's really important, it's the approach that as company we are doing, in particular the approach that is a global approach, a 360-degree approach for the circular economy. And in particular, we are doing a lot of activities from the selection of circular and also regenerative materials for the collection, but also the use of certified and post-consumer packaging. Not only, we are also working a lot, for example, to the donation of upcycle of obsolete raw materials. So for me, it's really interesting, the example also that Andrea Rosso brings to us regarding what we call prototyping. And this is really the intent to strengthen the consumption of the renewable energy in the next years. I would like to tell that regarding the packaging, as company, we work a lot since the past on this objective. This came from really the past. In particular, we decided to apply all the FCC paper, and you know that this logo guarantee that the product is made of raw materials that are harvested from forests managed according to sustainable principle. And not only, we are also using the packaging that is completely made in Italy. So our iconic red packaging is completely made in Italy, and this is really interesting for a brand that is a luxury brand, and is a decision that we apply since really the long past. And it's also fully recyclable, and it's biodegradable, and also post-consumer. So, for example, in the achievement of this action, when we do all the assessment regarding the packaging, we think that regarding the packaging we can do something more related to other parts that are related to the goods. For example, I can give you some example. What we decided to do in 2019, we did an assessment for the use of single-use plastic. So what we did is that we decided to map everything, to map all the quantities of single-use plastic, and try to identify concrete solution to switch and to eliminate and to reduce this kind of consumption. And for sure, when we did this kind of assessment, we not only did in Italy, but we decided to do at global level for all the entire group. We decided to do site visit, and site visit we did not only in the offices, but also in the store. So the final output for us was really interesting, because these help us to draw the guidelines in order to replace the single-use plastic for each type that we identified, and also to decide a sort of priority and timing. So we try to really implement an approach that is really concrete, and for sure in 2020, for example, we started to evaluate which are really the feasible alternatives. So, for example, among others, I can speak about progressively replace hangers, progressively replace polybags, replace tags, replace labels. And this is something that can be done using, for example, bioplastic or recycled plastic, recyclable plastic. And this is more or less what we decided to implement. Just to give you an example, we started from 2016 as company to have a sustainability plan. And this is really important because this is fully integrated to our strategic plan. And we give to all the functions that are working on sustainability the targets to be completely measured on the achievement of these goals and these actions. So I really think that also in this part, that is the part related to the ocean, relating in particular to the plastic of the packaging, we really need to involve a lot of actors internal of the company, but this kind of activities can only be achieved when we work together with the other function. And for this we created a green team, that is a team, an interfunctional team that is made by 20 different functions. So it's made by logistic, the operation director, the communication, HR, merchandising, and so on. And in this kind of challenge that are really big for a company, because you need to change the processes and also the way you are working every day, it's really important to have all completely involved. For example,
okay, Veronica, sorry, I have to stop you because you are doing so many things. Very interesting. I know that you could talk for hours, and it's impressive. Yeah. It's impressive what you're doing. It's now we run out of time. So can you tell me in 20 seconds which action do you feel more proud about, or all this that you mentioned, because you've done an impressive amount of action? Is there one that really makes you happy?
Yeah, I would like just to mention the fact that when we decided to sign the Fashion Pact as company, we really decided to be completely concrete, as we did since the beginning, because we started doing sustainability since 2014. And we decided to sign the Fashion Pact, but also to implement the science-based target as a methodology, for example. And all the functions involved in this project in the company that are really more than 10 different functions, work in order to achieve in the 2020 the implementation of this methodology. So we were the first luxury Italian brand to implement science-based target methodology. And
cooperation between all the functions with science-based targets. You should write an article. Why don't you write an article about this? And to make it available also for the other companies. It's very important. Normally marketing people or human resources or legal, they don't like too much science-based things. So it's very good if you made it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm sorry we have to go ahead, but let me take this chance because Veronica told us about many initiatives. Please make your questions in the question section. I see already many questions, and also if we have many of them, even if we have many of them, we can reply to them during next days directly, and maybe pick up some of them. But please don't feel shy and make questions, because it's only by making questions that we go ahead. So thanks very much. And now I welcome Michela Giacchini from Quantis, and now we go to a very interesting part, because the third and last pillar of the fashion pact is about biodiversity, and I think this is the sexiest. We are in the sexy part of the pact. Why do I say this? Because climate is, we said it's the priority, and then Simone said that ocean and circularity is the challenging, but biodiversity and the impact of companies on biodiversity and how to regenerate biodiversity is really the future, and it's something that is not yet analyzed at global scale. So it's something very, very interesting. Tell us more about this, Michela.
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to do that. And I confirm that also for me, this is one of the topics that I'm most fascinated from in sustainability. I started working on this back in 2015, when in my company back then, we did a project with IUCN, which is one of the most globally recognized and largest global organization working and investing on scientific research on biodiversity. And we exactly mapped the risks and opportunities in the apparel sector for biodiversity. So today I'm going to speak exactly about that, and the title of my intervention is "The Great Beauty Fashion Needs to Protect." And the picture that I'm going to show you now is basically something that can well support my speech. These are just, let's say, some of the species of sheep farmed all around the globe, and their biological diversity makes them suitable to live and be farmed in different parts of the planet. And of course, fashion benefits from this diversity, given that fashion uses one of the products of this farming, which is their wool. So of course, biodiversity is something which is vital for the planet. It's the foundation of healthy ecosystems, and it allows also the planet to be resilient towards extreme events such as fires or floods. Of course, the biodiversity is also vital for fashion. So the reason why we are talking about that today is to answer exactly this question: why does fashion need biodiversity? Well, first, it needs biodiversity because biodiversity provides a series of ecosystem services to the fashion industry. For example, it provides clean water, which is absolutely fundamental for processes like textile dyeing or leather tanning. It provides the breakdown of pollutants that are emitted from industrial processes in fashion, but also from intensive agriculture and farming. It also provides a sort of inspirational value for designers and creators and creative people. And of course, we have to remember that millions of people on the planet live depending on biodiversity. They depend on biodiversity to have healthy lives and to have successful economies and to develop their economies. So fashion exists thanks to the work of these people, and of course for the benefit of these people. So of course fashion needs biodiversity, but fashion poses also biodiversity at risk, and it does so basically creating pressures on biodiversity. What are these pressures? The first one is the land use change and the water change. So among the pressures that are created, in the next slide we are going to see 5 pressures. The first one is land use change and water use change. For example, deforestation is basically a sort of change of land use from forest to something else, and is a disruptive phenomena on biodiversity, on ecosystems. The pollution that, as I was saying before, is generated by the industrial processes, but also by intensive agriculture and intensive farming. Then the climate change we were talking about a few minutes ago. The resources exploitation, so the exploitation, for example, of fertile soils, of water basins where water is used to irrigate cultures, and last but not least, the invasive alien species that are sometimes brought to areas where they wouldn't naturally belong. For example, in the case of Farmed 4. And fashion system, if not properly managed, can generate this pressure, for example, through the sourcing. So in the next slide, we have just a few examples of what can happen and what might be, speaking about the action that a fashion brand is taking, what might be a phenomena that generates pressure on biodiversity. For example, sourcing leather from areas that are endangered with deforestation, or sourcing cotton from areas that are water scarce, or wood pulp where the environmental regulations are too weak to guarantee a proper protection of those areas. So all these many phenomena can actually generate a biodiversity loss. So the methodology that Quantis uses to actually design a real biodiversity strategy, which we are going to see in the next slide, starts exactly with understanding the role of biodiversity in the fashion business. So the awareness is the first and most relevant thing, both the awareness of why a fashion brand needs biodiversity, what services biodiversity provides the company, and what are the potential impacts that the company has on biodiversity. Then we proceed by mapping the potential sources of impacts on biodiversity, meaning all the sources and types of impacts. We have a multi-criteria approach, so nothing is left apart. We know that in nature everything is interlinked and interconnected, and we have exactly that approach to map everything and find out all the potential interlinkaged implications. In this way, we can identify the most relevant hotspots. Knowing these hotspots, we can then set a biodiversity strategy. So we really deep dive on what is creating a biodiversity impact, and we set together with the companies a real action plan to reach these ambitious targets that are, let's say, at the end of the biodiversity strategy. And this is exactly aligned with what the Fashion Pact requires. The Fashion Pact requires the companies to commit to a blueprint, to map their value chains, to take responsibility for the risks generated on biodiversity, and to deep dive on the priorities. So I want to close my intervention today quoting this sentence from Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is probably one of the best known in artists from the pop art, so something super artificial and fictitious as advertising can be. But still, he said, land really is the best art. And for land to be a form of art, we definitely need to protect one of the assets that our planet has, which is the biological diversity of the creatures, of the ecosystems, of the genetic pool of who lives on the planet. And fashion companies are increasingly doing so. What we saw today, all these speeches really demonstrate that fashion companies, fashion brands are taking responsibility for that, for important impacts, environmental impacts such as the climate change or the biodiversity loss. So I would really like to thank all the speakers today for the value they brought us today. And I thank all of you, of course, for listening to my words. Thank you.
Thanks, Michela, for this very interesting presentation. I have already in my mind, there are a lot of questions I would like to make to you, but especially about the existence of metrics and how can you build a company strategy on biodiversity is something very interesting. Maybe we will have time for a second workshop in a few months. This is my personal proposal to Regenerative Society Foundation and Quantis to see, and also to involve other companies and to go deeper into these topics. I think this is an opening of, you know, a journey that can be also see different milestones. So thanks very much. And following the idea of matching the theoretical presentation and strategic with concrete actions, let me introduce Rebecca Burgess, Executive Director of Fibershed. That is somebody who really does it in practical, because Fibershed is a non-profit doing regeneration of fabrics. So tell us more, Rebecca, about how do you make these principles that we discussed today real in your everyday work?
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate everyone's time who's presented thus far. It's been a perfect summary, and again, just an open door for deeper dives. These are brief presentations, so I'm going to go quickly through a framework to start, number one. Number two, I'm going to provide some land-based examples that are directly from the field, very fresh examples. And then I'm going to finish with just a quick North Star about where we're headed and where we invite others to head as well. So just to note, it was mentioned that I'm the director of Fibershed, which is a North Central California nonprofit. So good morning from the Pacific coast of the Western United States. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I would start with a framework. So the idea here, and we invite others to adopt the ideas and the concepts and interpolate them in their own corporate structures, this idea of soil to soil. So to mitigate plastic pollution within the actual textile, to rely on fresh carbon sources from our biosphere that have a decomposition pathway, you could layer in the ideas of circularity, decomposition, carbon cycling, biodiversity, all of that, and of course, inherently the protection of oceans, fits within the soil to soil framework. How brands can engage with this framework, I mean, it's technically, if you're not using fossil carbon-based filaments, you're dependent on natural and working lands for your fiber, for potentially even your dye sources. So the soil to soil framework allows us to think about everything as becoming food for microbes at some point. And thinking about the natural and working lands where our natural fibers and dyes are derived from, to think about them as enhancing their ability to capture carbon and working together to enhance their ability to function as carbon sinks. And all of this framework, we try to operationalize at a regional setting, meaning, you know, within 300 to 400 miles even is our goal. And I'll get into that in a moment. Next slide. So this was mentioned earlier. James Hansen wrote Our Children's Burden. He was in front of the US Congress in 1988, warning us that we had very little time to solve for runaway climate change. So just as a reminder, there are two strategies, and Simone brought this up, the two strategies to stabilize the climate and bring us down to safe levels of the CO2e parts per million in the atmosphere that will once again allow the long wave radiation of the sun to move out of our atmosphere to reduce the heating effect. We have to reduce CO2e, and the two ways that is done for fashion and I think many industrial aspects of the economy, is to reduce the greenhouse gases that we're emitting. That's really the focus. It's how do we go to renewable energy powered systems and reduce the amount of energy we're using overall. And then in combination, we cannot stabilize the climate without carbon sinks. So I'd invite everyone on this who's listening to think about carbon sinking at this point. You know, yes, you could use trees and biological based carbon as an offset, but at a time as critical as this, I would also invite the concept that you can invest in the working lands where you derive fiber from, even without thinking of it as an offset, because at this point we need greenhouse gas reductions and net negative strategies to work together. So if we use net negative strategies to offset GHGs, we don't actually reduce the overall legacy load of CO2e in the atmosphere at the rate we need to. So there's, again, offsets could be a segue, they could be in part a goal, but they should be a goal to getting to the point where we're neutral in our industrial emissions and we're treating our working landscapes as sinks. Next slide. Ratan Lal, a favorite soil scientist, globally recognized by the IPCC and others. That slide went pretty quick, but if you saw that, that was basically what we can do by 2100 if we actually work in natural and working landscapes, again, where the fashion industry has so much impact. 30% of the volume of textile is cotton, 2% right now is wool, but a lot of what we're dependent on is fossilized carbon in the form of acrylic, polyester, and nylon. So as we transition and reduce our reliance on plastics, we are going to be more focused on natural and working lands as sources for raw material. So here's the technical potential, which means we can actually reduce the legacy load of CO2e very much through carbon sinking. And so the science is there, and I can refer people to the papers if they're interested. Next slide. So how do we operationalize the work? We focus on giving brands an opportunity to create a tax deductible donation. If they can't pay, significantly amount for the price of carbon in the fiber, meaning internalizing the cost of land restoration in the fiber, we always admonish that to occur. Pay more for the fiber, include the cost of all these new practices that enhance photosynthetic carbon capture at the farm level. But if you can't, we also create a route for brands to donate to a carbon farm fund, which is tax deductible in the United States. It's a framework that we were able to devise within our governmental systems that allow us to then channel 100% of brand funding straight to the land. So I'm gonna, again, I said I'd focus on land-based strategies today. So we'll go into some of the examples of how that carbon farm fund has been able to support change on landscape. So next slide. Before we dive in, those practices that we fund are old practices. They are part of indigenous tradition. They have worked their way through agrarian society for millennia. And some of these are more modern, but some are just straight up old school knowledge. And what you see in the background photo is an olive orchard where we are alley cropping indigo. So alley cropping is just one example of many. And we have computer modeling using environmental systems modeling through Colorado State University and UC Berkeley to help us understand, based on GPS coordinates, if we apply these practices on a piece of land in the United States, what the greenhouse gas reduction will be, meaning the drawdown capacity within 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, and 80 years. So we can project forward because these practices have been directly measured, computer modeled, both. So next slide. On our community is just, this is the work. We've already utilizing the fund, implemented 156 practices in our community. We're working on now actually 170,000 acres of land. That's changed in the last month due to the inclusion of larger scale San Joaquin Valley agriculture. And our goal is to remove 5 billion pounds of carbon. And we've already mapped which practices will take us there on which land bases. And we have all we call it carbon farm map of what that needs to look like for that to occur. Next slide. One example, silvopasture. It's intensive silvopasture. If those aren't familiar with it, it's where animals graze. It's reestablishing tree cover, and tree cover that's, you know, again, functional within. In our community, we're in a temperate oak woodland, in this case, temperate climate oak woodland. We have arid and semi-arid regions in California. We have alpine, we have coastal temperate rainforest. So within all these microclimates, you fit the native tree species or the most naturalized tree species that will work. You reestablish trees in the silvopasture where the animals graze. Next slide. Here's a cotton farm with extra long staple cotton, beautiful quality. We've done the math. They have a carbon farm plan at this farm, and we're looking at implementing that plan. Once implemented, it will equate to not only the business as usual carbon capture, but we're always looking at additionality. What's additional that we can pull out as quickly as possible? So the additional carbon is 8,759 thousand metric tons of CO2e per year on this farm, if fully optimized. Next slide. Here's research actually paid for by a major denim company, where you see green strips. This photo was taken last month. We're actually getting to, all that green is photosynthetic carbon capture. Those are all solar panels, leaves absorbing CO2, compared to conventional production, which is the dark brown strips. That's what the fields would look like if the brand didn't invest in cover crop seed. So here's a brand actually investing in the seed, in non-treated seed, in strip tillage, etc. So this is a 3-year research trial, but it's beautiful to see that much carbon capture on a cotton landscape compared to what it would look like. So we're getting there. Next slide. Biodiversity on that cotton farm. We have annual bird counts, insect counts, and small mammal counts. And we partner with, actually they're called partner biologists, and they work with a conservatory, the Point Blue Bird Observatory. It's just a partnership that we've created, I think, all over the world. There are partner biologists who would love to work with fashion brands. You can partner with biologists to come to the farms where your cotton, wool, raw meat, whatever you are growing, you can actually start to get baseline biodiversity counts, start implementing practices to enhance that, invest in those practices, and then feel out how that's tracking year by year with more counts. There's massive change that can occur. We've seen it. Next slide.
Rebecca, unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Oh, so, okay.
Sorry. And I will not ask you which is the most, the action that you feel proud of, because it seems like you should be proud of all of them. And if you have a list of these actions and best practices, please do include them in your presentation, and we will send all participants. And maybe they can contact you directly, because it seems like in each of these actions there is room for companies all over the world, in Europe, in Asia, to start with this, replicating and doing this. So I'm very sorry that I have to stop you, interrupt you.
No, but it's fine.
The time is running. So
I would just say then, yes, replication is our methodology or our theory of change. It's not that we or any one company become a monolith anymore. The act of decentralization is nature-based. Nature doesn't create monoliths, it creates diversity. So I think to invite everyone to feel out that everyone has a place in this work. Everyone has a place in creating the best they can where they are. And that's really important. And I do believe under climate destabilization, which we will continue to experience until we stabilize the climate, I'm hopeful we can do this. It's going to be a Herculean effort. I would invite everyone to consider how decentralization models make you more resilient in the face of change. When one country floods, when one country is on fire, is your supply chain is it in one place? Is political instability forcing you to close your doors in some locations? And is that undergirding of that climate? So again, inviting decentralization into the conversation, thus everyone needs to be at the table. We all have a role here.
Very interesting. So thanks very much, and keep on working with this activities. I would like now to call on the virtual stage Giovanna Gregori from Regenerative Society Foundation. Giovanna, are you there?
I am.
It seems like we have prepared your speech and your talk, because with Fibershed and the Regeneration, we are going deep into the heart of the foundation. Also, what is the goal of the foundation? I cannot see you.
I know. I'm trying to switch on my camera, but it doesn't seem to work. Hold on a sec. I'm trying again.
First, in the meantime, I have to apologize because the webinar will last 10 or 15 minutes more, because there were so many interesting things that I didn't have the courage to give just exactly 10 minutes. I gave a bit more to the speakers, but I see that 95% of the attendees are still there, or 99%. So it seems like it's going very well. So before Giovanna, maybe you can start talking, even if we don't see you. First of all, I would like to ask you if you are satisfied with the content, because you were, and the Regenerative Society Foundation was the host and the proposer and the organizer together with Quantis. Are you satisfied with what happened today?
I'm very happy, and I take advantage, even if you can't see me. I'm sorry. I'm thanking everybody for the very meaningful contributions that everybody brought to the table, and of course I thank Quantis for putting this together with all the team of the Regenerative Society Foundation. And I also want to thank you, Raimondo, because as usual you are a wonderful moderator, and you bring not only empathy and competence, but also, it's always very nice to have you conduct our webinar. So we're very happy. Thank you, everybody.
Tell us more about the foundation, because Regenerative Society looks as a very interesting title and very ambitious. But what are we doing in the foundation exactly? Can you tell us?
So maybe you want to share my presentation in the meantime, yes. So I can tell you a little bit. About the foundation. The foundation, as Raimondo said before, it's really a baby, because we are born at the end of last year, and we are born from an original idea from a group of entrepreneurs who working together with a Sustainable Development Foundation itself and with the B Corp system, decided to give life to a coalition of global leaders to fight for regeneration, to bring regeneration as the next step towards sustainability. And I'm starting with a definition of regeneration. The way we see it, of course. Regeneration is the set of processes responsible for keeping life in good health through the maintenance and restoration of the natural capital. So we start from this definition, and if we go to next slide, we go a little deeper. It involves, in particular, all kinds of biological systems, from microorganisms to large population, encompasses several applications. Regenerative agriculture, land and water system protection and restoration, urban regeneration, regenerative materials innovation, and sustainable production. This connects very well to the beautiful Rebecca's presentation, speaking about regenerative agriculture. Is going to be, as you see in one of the next slides, our first focus for the activity and for the plan of the foundation. So for us, we like to say that regeneration represents the fourth R in the circular economy path. After reduce, reuse, recycle, we get to regenerate. So as I said, regeneration is the next step towards sustainability, and is based on the idea of human ecology, which is in a way the complex study of human interaction with the planet. So not only it embraces the whole environmental part. So as we said, the natural capital, depletion, and therefore restoration, but also through an interdependent concept, it embraces happiness and well-being, because only a regenerative and a regenerated environment can sprout and give birth to a regenerative society. What is regeneration? We continue, so please, next slide. Very quickly contributes to a few SDGs, of course, and as I said, because of this deep interdependence and deep interconnectedness of all the parts of the system, regenerative economy, which is the center, you will see, of our pledge and of our commitment, is intended in a holistic sense. Here in the next slides, you will see who we are. So you will see very quickly who the Regenerative Society Foundation is made of, let's say, in a form of a participatory no-profit organization, so open to the broader possible number of founders and supporters. That's what a participatory foundation means. And at the moment, the coalition includes international founders and board members, of course, all committed and engaged in promoting the transformation of the society towards a regenerative socioeconomic model. So from the depletive, extractive model of the past, and unfortunately still of the present, to a regenerative socioeconomic paradigm, in a way. So in this slide, you see the broad coalition which support the Regenerative Society Foundation. So what is our vision and our mission? In the next slides, very quickly. As human beings and change makers, we commit to act as a regenerative force for society and nature. And our mission is to promote this transition that I just mentioned to a regenerative socioeconomic model, a paradigm shift towards bio-driven sustainability. Our core activity, what we do and what we want to do, what we just started doing and what we want to do. Basically, two main activity or fields of activity. We want to develop regenerative economy through knowledge management and transfer, through brokering of critical resources, knowledge and funds for regenerative projects, and through business and consumer engagement, of course, because it's much needed. And then we also want, as a final objective, the macro objective, to institutionalize regenerative economy, defining the sectors and business model, setting metrics and standards, seeking multilateral recognition, and also, and of course, through advocacy. As you see, we are quite ambitious. Very schematically, our roadmap, activity roadmap, we will work, and we are working on advocacy communication. We will build a digital library, which is the knowledge organization side. We will create an open innovation network for regeneration with educational tools. And of course, as we said, we will broker regenerative projects. Also, we have in our plan to have regional summits. Last year, we had our first kickoff summit in Parma in October 2020, and we plan to have our next one in the US as soon as possible, of course. Also, we don't want to do yet another webinar. We would like to do a real event. So hopefully we will be able to do it as soon as possible. For the roadmap continues. The 10-year roadmap will add a sector-related scope each year in a way that will touch all sectors and scope by 2030, which is our framework of let's say, of commitment. So you will see, we start with agroecology, which includes both regenerative agriculture and land regeneration. We will then get to urban regeneration, water system, and then regenerative material, as we said. Next slide, please. Very quickly, what is our program? Our program is called Regeneration 2030. and it is built around a three-layered pledge: regenerative economy, climate action, world happiness. You see in this scheme, let's say, that there's the core part of let's say, climate action, because we believe that without addressing the climate emergency, none of the rest will be possible. So for sure, addressing the climate emergency is at the core of our activity and of a project we will build. But of course, as we said, both happiness and well-being as part of social sustainability and regenerative economy as a business paradigm, let's say, are overarching the whole program. So I'm closing up saying that we have the reason why our program is called Regeneration 2030 is that we believe that we have 10 years to address and take concrete action towards generation. This is a window in which we need to start this transformation. And this is, if you want, the core of our intention, starting the transformation in a way to prepare for the next generation to enter a new era where all the commitment that we took in the pledge are fulfilled, and there is a future for planet and humanity. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Giovanna, and I also take the chance to remind people that the pledge is available online, and you can have you can check the pledge and see whether it fits with your ideas and goals, and send also your comments or proposals. I like very much when you say we are a baby, but we are very ambitious, as you can see, because it's exactly what we are. But it seems like a very good work has been done in 1 year, or in less than 1 year. So I would like all the speakers to, except Giovanna, to turn on the camera. Giovanna, I will not insist, but if you succeed, it's very good. And to show
I'm trying, but I'm keeping to try. When you see that I'm stopping to talk or I'm losing a piece, is because I'm trying, but I can't make it. I'm very sorry.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank all the speakers, because your input, it was really good. Before closing up, I will make some very quick questions. We have received many questions. Let me pick up some of them. One to Andrea also, starting from the first one. There is often the prejudice that something sustainable is not that good to see, like not related to beauty. It's also true that a lot of people think that sustainability is also expensive. So people can think it is expensive and not good to see. What do you think about this? 1 minute.
It's true that there is a point of expensive, because when you move the machine, is a big machine. I mean, from the talk of every one of the panelists, you can understand how much money, effort, time consuming. And the result is not immediate, so it takes time to have the results. But it takes really an investment at the beginning, investment that if the system works faster and with the amount of people necessary to be innovative in that sense, then the price will go down. But initially, for sure, I can tell you, straightforward is more expensive.
Okay, thanks very much, Andrea. A question for Veronica Ferragamo. Could you provide examples of regenerative materials? Could you also share example of actions you are taking to mitigate the release of microplastics in the environment through the washing of clothes? Very peculiar, very direct and technical question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think also that if you want to send us a question, we have an address you can write to us, that is csr@ferragamo.com, so that if there is no time to reply, we can answer to all the questions that you have, and we can share this address. And for provide an example, we are using different material in the last collection, and would like to tell. For example, now regarding the ready-to-wear, we are using Reverso. That is really an interesting material, because we are doing an upcycling of our stock of cashmere. And Reverso is reusing the cashmere, and I would say that the quality, it's really, really good. The same for silk. We are using Resilk, and this means that, for example, if we have old stock of silk, instead of sending them to destruction, that this is really what we would like to avoid. Now we can try to do a circular economy, just using this company that is reusing our silk. And this is really a nice practice, because we have also changed all our internal processes. So this means that now we have quantities of stock related to silk, and we can send to this company and have back the Resilk, and the quality is good, and we are using this kind of material, for example, in our last two collections. Another example is Renylon. Also, this is an example of how we can substitute materials, in particular using for accessories. Accessories, I mean more like bags and luggages, for example. And this is also very good, because you can print on it, and the quality is really amazing. So these are only examples that we can provide, that we insert in our last collection, and are really, really interesting.
Thanks very much, Veronica. And I have always a stronger idea that we should make a practical workshop of all these best practices in the future. But before I ask the final question to Simone, let me ask Sara. I received a question about the scope 1, 2, and 3, and then you said you will discover that you don't have the data sometimes or many times. Which is the most difficult part of scope 3 in terms of data that you have met?
There are, okay, so we were able to get all the data, but I mean, it's the one we struggled the most with is actually on the origin of the raw materials for some of our products that are like not made by our own suppliers, but just when we buy finished products. So for sure, for all the designers' brands, most of the production happens in a controlled way, so that we don't buy finished products. We have our partners making them with the material we choose, and then it's a lot easier. When you buy finished products, your supplier doesn't always give you full traceability. Hopefully, it does have it, but it's a lot difficult to know the origin, for example, of the thread, the origin of the cotton when you buy finished product. And that was one limitation of the way we were able to gather the data, and we struggled.
Thanks very much. I think that this is really a serious challenge. I heard one of your colleagues once telling us, I would like to know exactly the field where that cotton is being produced. And I said, good luck. We can work on that. Okay, so thanks to all speakers. I'm very sorry that Rebecca had to leave, because there were questions for Rebecca. Maybe we will send question directly to her. And Simone, are you satisfied with the outputs of today?
Very, very satisfied. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us, and as you already said, happy if it's let's say a first a chapter in a longer story, but it's really a pleasure to be part of this dynamic and be honest on what are the challenges, at the same time be ambitious because this is the level of the sustainability challenge that we have to face. So very happy to be here with all of you, and thanks a lot to all the speakers and the audience.
Thanks very much. So we can close the webinar. I think that sometimes a journey, like we call this webinar, means also that you can take some stops and maybe rest a bit and maybe talk with your colleagues and reflect on the journey and the goals and what we should do. I think we have done this today, and I think it can be helpful, and I hope it can be helpful. I just remind that all the presentations will be available and sent to participants and available also on the internet site, and the whole webinar will be seen and can be seen on internet sites of Quantis and Regenerative Society Foundation and on the YouTube channel. So from tomorrow morning, we will start again, all of us making this journey practical and reality in our work. So hope to see you soon, and let's keep on working for sustainability. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.